Part 3 of the Creative Constellations program is where things really start to get interesting for a lot of the participants. It's really fascinating to do what we did in Part 2, which is to identify the array of creativities that you express. But now, in Part 3, we start to layer that onto an understanding of the creative process, and specifically to a cyclical model of the creative process, which I've developed to help us be able to visualize the kind of terrain that all creators are moving through as we do the work of creation. And the in the first workbook of this part of the course, we really just take a deep dive into this idea of the creating process as a cyclical process. We also talk about the way in which the nature of creativity is to actually bring us into little mini cycles within the larger cycle, and how restarting over and over and over and over again is just part of the deal when it comes to creativity. So we spend some time looking at creativity as a cycle, and then we map your individual creative modes onto that cycle, because it turns out that those 25 creative modes cluster beautifully around 5 different areas or facets of the creative process. As you sort of map your creative modes onto, we just call it the star chart of the creative cycle, you begin to be able to visualize what we call your zones of creative power. So the areas within the cycle of creating where you have the most natural skill and strength, and areas where you need to rely on guides and co-creators or extra intention to really sort of see your project's full cycle. And again, this reinforces at this stage of the program, really reinforces the notion that all of us really working together is what it takes to move the world forward, and that you're not alone. You don't have to create everything by yourself. Many of us create collaboratively, and even those of us who believe that we're most comfortable really creating in solitude, discover over time that in our solitude we are nurtured and supported by understanding ourselves to be members of a larger community of creators, not only all around the globe today, but also stretching back across time. So we really emphasize that with your zones of creative power, it's about owning your strengths, but also about owning the ways in which your best work is done in collaboration, or at least in connection with other creators who have strengths that maybe you don't, or whose strengths complement yours. So that's Part 3, exploring your relationship to the creative process. And in the next video, we'll go forward and talk about Part 4. I'll see you there.